honourable member for Rugby that Reform want healthcare to be free at the point of delivery.
Nigel Farage sparks outrage in Parliament over EU trade revelation, MPs caught off guard. You're not going to believe what just happened inside Parliament. Everything seemed normal, the usual debates, the same tired political back and forth. But then, Nigel Farage stood up and dropped a bombshell. What he said has sent shockwaves through Westminster. MPs frozen. Journalists scrambling. The public furious. This wasn't some offhand remark. It was a direct, bold accusation that painted a very different picture of what's really going on behind closed doors with the UK's so-called independent trade policy post-Brexit. Let's break this down because it's bigger than it looks. In a fiery address that's already making headlines across Europe, Nigel Farage accused government officials of quietly signing off on trade conditions that, in his words, make a mockery of Brexit. According to Farage, buried inside the latest round of trade negotiations are terms that align key sectors of the UK economy back with EU regulatory frameworks, without a public vote, without media coverage, and certainly without the approval of the millions who voted to leave. He claimed, and I quote, "This government has sold us out behind our backs. They're tying us to Brussels again while pretending we've taken back control." That line alone caused uproar. Some MPs laughed nervously. Others shouted back. But many noticeably said nothing. You could feel the tension in the chamber. The Speaker had to call for order twice. And here's where it gets even more serious. Farage was referring to a set of provisional regulatory alignments that allow certain UK exports, particularly pharmaceuticals and agriculture, to remain compliant with EU standards without formal divergence. That might sound harmless to some, even practical. But critics say it's a slippery slope, a quiet return to the same oversight the Brexit vote was meant to end. What's more, and this is key, these agreements were not debated in full view. They were part of subclauses and technical annexes, buried in hundreds of pages of trade language that only a handful of MPs had actually read. One former trade advisor, speaking anonymously to The Independent, said, "The public was never supposed to notice. That's the truth." Reaction has been fierce and fast. Within minutes of Farage's speech, clips began circulating on X, formerly Twitter. One account with over 400,000 followers posted, "Nigel Farage just exposed what the mainstream media refused to cover. This is betrayal pure and simple." Another comment read, "They said Brexit meant sovereignty. They lied again." Even some Conservative MPs seemed rattled. Sir Bill Cash, a long-time Eurosceptic, reportedly confronted ministers behind closed doors after the session, demanding clarification on why these terms weren't brought to committee earlier. Labour, of course, had its own spin. A spokesperson for Keir Starmer's team dismissed Farage's claims as performance politics, saying that the agreements are standard alignment mechanisms that benefit British trade. But that's not how the public sees it. The comment section under major political YouTube channels is exploding with outrage. People are asking who's really pulling the strings here. Remember the whole point of Brexit? It wasn't just about leaving the EU. It was about control over laws, borders, and especially trade. The idea was that Britain would finally be able to chart its own course, make its own rules, and stand as a truly sovereign nation. But what Farage just laid bare is that this vision may be slipping away piece by quiet piece. And the real kicker? It's not foreign bureaucrats doing it this time. It's happening under a British government, with a Conservative majority. That's why this moment feels different. Because it's not just about Farage shouting from the sidelines. It's about something deeper, trust. Even some Brexit supporters are now asking, was it all for nothing? One woman outside Parliament told GB News, "I voted to leave so we could make our own decisions. If we're just going to copy and paste Brussels rules, what was the point?" Meanwhile, Farage isn't backing down. In follow-up interviews, he's doubled down, saying this is just the tip of the iceberg. He's now calling for a full parliamentary inquiry into what he calls covert reintegration mechanisms. Strong words, and ones that are starting to resonate beyond just his core base. Well, a few things are already in motion. Several MPs, both Tory and Reform UK, are pushing for emergency debates. Trade experts are being summoned to brief committees. And government officials? They're staying quiet. Very quiet. Which only fuels suspicion. Because here's the thing. If this was all above board, why not be transparent? Why not explain it from the start? The silence is louder than any speech right now. And if Farage is right, if there is a quiet return to EU oversight in progress, the political cost could be massive. This isn't just about one trade deal. It's about whether Brexit is being honored or rewritten behind closed doors. And the question on everyone's mind? If they're willing to do this in secret, what else is happening that we don't know about? Stay tuned, because what happens next could shake the foundations of British politics again. And this time, people are watching.